Welcome to another deep dive, listeners. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at the legendary Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan, yeah. Founder of the Mongol Empire, a figure often, surrounded by these tales of brutality and conquest. But what if I told you there's another side to this legendary leader?
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's this other side we're going to be exploring?
It's a story of how Genghis Khan, even though he came from a really brutal and turbulent time, managed to create an empire that stretched across continents. And not just through military force, but through something, well, pretty revolutionary for his era, meritocracy.
Meritocracy. It's a
Right.
pretty modern concept.
Yeah.
Are we saying Genghis Khan back in the 13th century was actually ahead of his time? That he was recognizing and rewarding talent?
Absolutely. You see, lots of leaders back then, they relied heavily on lineage and inherited status. But Genghis Khan, he kind of flipped the script. He understood that real strength wasn't about who you were born as, but what you could actually do.
That's a pretty radical approach for back then. Do we have any examples of this meritocracy in action? Like real stories, real people that illustrate this principle?
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk about Subutai, one of Genghis Khan's most brilliant generals. This guy, he didn't come from some powerful family. In fact, his background was, well, pretty humble. But through his tactical genius and total dedication, he rose through the ranks.
So a classic underdog story. I love it. But what made Subutai so special? What did he do that showcased his strategic brilliance?
He was the mastermind behind those Mongol victories in Eastern Europe. His campaigns were, well, they were known for these brilliant maneuvers, lightning-fast attacks, and he really understood the enemy's weaknesses. Even today, military historians are in awe of his tactics.
Wow, so he really exemplifies Genghis Khan's eye for talent. But was Subutai a one-off, or were there others who rose through the ranks based on merit?
Oh no, he wasn't a one-off. There were many others. Take Yelmi, for instance. He was one of Genghis Khan's earliest followers, a warrior who proved his loyalty time and time again. He even saved the Khan's life in a battle.
Save the Khan's life. Talk about earning trust and respect.
Yeah.
But how did this idea of meritocracy play out beyond the battlefield? I mean, running a huge empire takes more than just military skill, right?
You're absolutely right. And this is where it gets really interesting. Genghis Khan didn't just apply meritocracy to the military, he used it in how he ran his empire, too.
So he was building a system where talent and competence mattered in every part of his government. That's incredibly forward-thinking for the 13th century.
Exactly. And to see how he did this, we need to look at the Yasa. It's also known as the Great Law. Think of it as this set of rules, these guidelines, that created a legal framework for the entire empire.
The Great Law. Sounds pretty intense. What were some of the key parts of this Yasa, and how did it help keep the empire stable?
Well, the Yasa, it covered everything. Military organization, social behavior, religious practices, even economic activities. It really emphasized fairness and order, and that helped promote unity and cooperation across all those different territories under Mongol rule.
So the Yasa was kind of like the glue that held this massive empire together. But I'm guessing legal systems can get pretty complicated, especially with so many different cultures and traditions. How did Genghis Khan make sure the Yasa worked across such a diverse empire?
Well, that's where his genius really shows. He knew he couldn't do it all himself. He needed the best minds, the most capable people to help him govern effectively. So he did something pretty remarkable for his time. He actively looked for and brought in talented people from the territories he conquered, no matter their background.
So he was bringing in experts from conquered lands to help run things. That's pretty different from what most conquerors do. Usually they force their own people and systems onto the conquered territories.
Genghis Khan, he understood that real power came from embracing diversity, from using the skills and knowledge of everyone in his realm. He brought in Chinese engineers, Persian scholars, all sorts of people, and created an incredibly inclusive administration for that time.
That's a remarkable example of forward-thinking leadership. He wasn't just building an empire, he was building a system where talent and expertise were valued above everything else. But how did he make this system actually work? How did he motivate people to strive for excellence? Was it just about promoting them based on merit? Or were there other incentives?
Genghis Khan, he was a pragmatist. He knew recognition and promotion were important, but he also understood that tangible rewards held a lot of power.
Interesting. What kind of tangible rewards are we talking about?
Well, he was known for being very generous with sharing the spoils of war with his soldiers. He would reward individual acts of courage and initiative. This created a powerful incentive for his troops to really excel on the battlefield.
So it wasn't just about fighting for some abstract cause or a distant ruler. It was about knowing that your contributions would be seen and rewarded. I can see how that would be a powerful motivator, especially when you're risking your life.
Exactly. And this idea of rewarding merit, it wasn't limited to the military. He applied it to everything, creating a system where hard work, talent, and loyalty were how you got ahead.
It's amazing that a leader from the 13th century had such a modern approach to leadership. Do we know if Genghis Khan himself ever actually explained his philosophy? Did he ever talk about his belief in meritocracy?
There's this famous quote attributed to him, and it sums up his philosophy perfectly. The merit of a man is not in his birth, but in his actions.
That's a powerful statement. Judging people based on what they do, not where they came from. It's almost like he's speaking to us today, challenging us to rethink our own biases.
It really is a timeless message, and it shows Genghis Khan's vision. He created this system at a time when birthright and social status were everything.
It makes you wonder what in his own life led him to believe in meritocracy. Do we have any insights into his personal experiences that might have shaped this philosophy?
Well, it's important to remember that Genghis Khan's early life was full of hardship. He experienced betrayal, loss, even enslavement before he rose to power. These experiences probably played a big role in shaping how he saw the world.
So maybe he built the kind of system he wished he had had, a system where anyone could rise to the top based on their own merits. That's a really compelling thought.
It really speaks to his character. He didn't let his own hardships make him bitter. Instead, he used them to create a fairer system for his people.
This is all fascinating, but how did this meritocracy thing work out in the long run? Did it actually help the empire succeed? Or was it just a nice idea that didn't really have much impact?
This is where we see the real genius of Genghis Khan's approach. His meritocratic system wasn't just some feel-good idea. It was a major factor in how successful and long-lasting the Mongol Empire was.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. Tell me more. How did the system translate into real tangible success for the empire? What were the long-term effects?
Remember that incredible loyalty that Genghis Khan built, Well, that played a huge role in holding the empire together. It wasn't just about taking land. It was about, winning over the hearts and minds of the people.
So they weren't just following orders, right?
Yeah.
His soldiers. They were fighting for a leader who genuinely valued them and rewarded them for their efforts.
Yeah, exactly. And that shared sense of purpose, and that trust in the system, it created this level of loyalty that you just didn't really see back then. And it wasn't just temporary either. It didn't die out with Genghis Khan.
You're saying this meritocracy thing, it outlived the guy who created it.
Absolutely. His successors, like Kublai Khan, the one who established the Yuan dynasty in China, they kept those meritocratic values going. It really shows just how effective the system was. It wasn't just tied to one person. It was like woven into the empire itself.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like the system became part of the culture.
Yeah.
But how does this story from the 13th century, how does it connect to us today? What can we, living in the 21st century, learn from how Genghis Khan led?
It's interesting. In today's world, we're so focused on titles and pedigree, who you know. But Genghis Khan's story, it reminds us that true leadership is about action, not who your parents were.
It's almost like he's saying, forget the fancy titles. Show me what you can actually do. Pretty radical, even today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He challenges us to look past, the surface stuff, the resumes, the social circles, to judge people on their potential and their contributions, not just appearances.
So it's not about where you come from, but what you bring to the table. What does that mean for us today? How can we apply these ideas of meritocracy in our own lives, in the systems we live in?
Well, this has big implications for how we think about leadership. Not just in government or the military, but everywhere. Businesses, schools, even families. You can use the ideas of meritocracy anywhere you're trying to, work together and reach a common goal.
So this isn't just ancient history, right? It's about ideas that can still help us today.
Right. Genghis Khan's story makes us ask tough questions about our own systems and societies.
Like what kind of questions? What do we need to be thinking about?
Well, are we really creating places where anyone can succeed no matter who they are or where they came from? Are we valuing talent and hard work above everything else? Or are we still stuck in these outdated ideas of power and privilege?
Those are some really thought-provoking questions. It's like Genghis Khan is talking to us from across the centuries, making us look at our own biases.
And that's what's so cool about history. It's not just about learning about the past. It's about using the past to understand our present and our future. you know?
Speaking of learning from the past, what surprised you the most when you were researching for this deep dive? Anything stand out to you about Genghis Khan and how he approached meritocracy?
The thing that struck me most was realizing his meritocracy wasn't just some theory in his head. It was like actually happening. The historical accounts, they're full of real stories like Subutai and Jimmy. These guys who came from nothing and rose to power just because of their abilities.
So it wasn't all talk. He actually put his ideas into action, built a system that really did reward talent and effort.
Yeah, exactly. And these stories, they weren't hidden away. They were celebrated, used as examples for others to follow.
It's like those stories were meant to inspire people, to show them that anyone could achieve great things in the Mongol Empire, no matter their background.
Right. It was a really powerful way to strengthen the values of the system, to build a culture where merit was really valued.
It's incredible to think that Genghis Khan, this figure who's often seen as a ruthless conqueror, was actually pioneering a system that feels incredibly relevant to us even now.
It just shows how complex history really is, and how important it is to look deeper, to understand the nuances that make these historical figures so fascinating.
And that's what makes these deep dives so rewarding. They make us challenge our assumptions and really dig into those complexities. And we often find these unexpected insights that, help us understand the world better.
I agree. It's about finding those hidden gems of wisdom that can, change our perspectives and broaden our understanding of what it means to be human.
So as we wrap up our exploration of Genghis Khan and this idea of meritocracy, what's the one thing you really want listeners to take away from this? What's the core message?
I want them to remember that leadership isn't about holding power over people. It's about empowering them, creating a culture where talent is recognized, supported, and rewarded, no matter where it comes from.
That's a really powerful message. And I'd add that it's also about constantly checking our own assumptions and biases. Are we really giving everyone a fair chance? Or are we letting old ideas about privilege hold us back? Genghis Khan's story, it reminds us that sometimes the best thing we can do is just give everyone a fair shot.
I like that. And on that note, I think it's time to leave our listeners with a final thought, something to ponder, inspired by Genghis Khan, but looking ahead to the challenges we face today.
Okay, I'm ready. What's that final thought? What's the question you want our audience to think about?
Think about the systems we have in place today. Our businesses, schools, governments, are they really designed to find and nurture talent? Or are we still, even if we don't realize it, holding people back because of things that have nothing to do with their potential? Genghis Khan, he reminds us that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is just give everyone a fair chance.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
I think our listeners will be thinking about that for a while.
I hope so, because that's what these deep dives are all about. They're not just about the past. They're about starting conversations that can shape our future.
As we rack up our look at Genghis Khan, one thing that really stands out to me is how much his story challenges those classic ideas we have about leadership.
Yeah, it really does make you think. We often picture these strong leaders as the ones who are always in control. But Genghis Khan, he had a different approach. He understood that real power comes from empowering the people around you, from creating a system where talent and hard work, that's what really matters.
And that system, his meritocracy, it wasn't just some idea he talked about. It was a real living part of the Mongol Empire. It influenced their military strategy, how they governed, everything.
It's amazing, right? He created the system that broke down all those cultural and social barriers. It didn't matter where you came from. What mattered was what you could do.
And it didn't die with him either. It continued under his successors, which really shows how effective it was. But what I find most incredible is just the scale of what he accomplished. We're talking about someone who unified all those warring tribes, built this massive empire, and left a lasting legacy.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. And he did it by recognizing the potential in the people around him and giving them a chance to shine.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that leadership isn't about being the one with all the authority. It's about inspiring other people, giving them the tools and opportunities to achieve great things.
It's about building a culture where everyone can contribute, where everyone has the chance to reach their full potential no matter what their background is.
Well said. As we finish up this deep dive, I'm left with this sense of awe and honestly a bit of inspiration. Genghis Khan's story really shows the power of human potential.
It's a story that still has a lot to teach us today. It challenges us to rethink our own ideas about leadership, to embrace diversity, and to build systems that reward talent and merit.
Thank you all for joining us on this journey into the world of Genghis Khan and the power of meritocracy.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
And until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep into all those amazing stories that, shape the world around us.
See you next time.